Good day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jules Keith-Lee from the Center for Teaching and Learning, and we are collaborating today with our wonderful friends in Atkins Library from Area 49. They are going to be talking to you today about bringing technology and innovation into your classroom using the tools that are in Area 49. We are joined today by Beth Caruso, the Digital Pedagogy and Emerging Technologies Librarian, Thomas Crocker, Technology and Multimedia Production Coordinator, Kristen Lamkowski, Area 49 Assistant, and Tiffany Davis, the Digital Scholarship Librarian. Thank you all for presenting to us today. I'm handing it over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today. Today we will discuss the bringing technology and innovation into your classroom with Area 49. So once again, Beth Caruso, Kristen Lampowski, Thomas Crocker, and myself, Tiffany Davis, will get you started with the Area 49 spaces and what you can do with your classrooms inside of Area 49. The collection of innovation spaces and services that we promote in Area 49 are creativity, collaboration, innovation, analysis, and experimentation. You can use both, I'm sorry, can't talk today. Area 49 can be used for both academic and personal projects. And if you need to check out any changes related to COVID-19, please check Area 49's website at area49.uncc.edu. And Thomas will now get us started with Area 49 spaces.
Okay, hi everybody, Thomas Crocker here. So this is one of the spaces that I oversee. It's the Technology Support Desk. It's on the second floor in Atkins. And this is where students, faculty, and staff can come and check out all different kind of equipment for multimedia needs. We've got GoPros, we've got DSLR cameras, 360 cameras, audio recording equipment, lots of different things that you can come and check out from the desk. This is also the place where you would go and check out any of the gaming lab equipment as well. So the games and controllers for the gaming lab, you would come to this desk as well. This desk also will give you access to spaces as well that we're going to talk about in a bit. So if you book the Easy Video Studio, you would come to this desk and the person working it would let you in and give you access to that room and answer any questions that you've got. So these are the other two spaces that I oversee. One of them is the Easy Video Studio. As the name suggests, it's a super simple, easy room to use. Everything's automated. You walk in and all you need is a flash drive to use the room's recording system. So you book the space beforehand and you can book it for up to 3 hours. And then if you bring your own flash drive, or we've got some available for checkout at the desk, you go in the space, plug it into the wall, and everything turns on in the camera, the TV, the lighting, the microphone, and you can record videos straight to that flash drive. There's a couple different layouts that you can record in. And it's just really simple, and it's just going to get you really high quality videos with a very easy way to do that. The multimedia lab kind of pairs with that room really well. So once you've recorded your content on your flash drive, you can go over to this room. It's a bay of iMacs with all the Adobe software and other video and photo programs loaded onto those machines. And that room, there's no reservation process for any of those machines. Whenever the library is open, you can go in there and work.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the Makerspace. The Makerspace is open Mondays through Fridays, 10 to 4, and that is just when classes are in session, both fall, spring, and summer. And the Makerspace is available for all kinds of making, high tech, low tech, tinkering, just figuring things out, experimenting with things, and just learning. So if you don't know what to do in the Makerspace or really any of our spaces, you can just ask us. And that's also something that we're going to be thinking about a little bit later during this webinar today. But we have a lot of things available in the Makerspace. So we have 3D printers, we have a laser cutter, we have CNC routers, we have 3D printing pens, we have soldering irons, all kinds of things. Oh, sewing machines, which people get very, very excited about. And we're getting new equipment all the time. In fact, we just got some new equipment in. So we are adding things to the space all the time. And you can use it for free, with the exception of some materials that you would have to pay for that go with the machines. So for example, for the filament for 3D printers, you would need to pay 25 cents per gram, which we can estimate ahead of time. And then you would also pay for however much you use of wood and things like that that would go with the laser cutter and the CNC router. Aside from that, it's simply available for any UNC student, faculty, or staff to use. One really good thing about this space is that we have all kinds of tools that students might need to use when they are working on various class projects that might be of the non-traditional nature. So if they need something like a glue gun or a drill or a hammer or something like that, they don't have to go out and buy one. They can just use one here. So it's also designed to have them save money too.
And hi, I'm Kristen Lamkowski. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Photogrammetry Lab, which is the space that I oversee in Area 49. It is our newest space, and it is the only space that is not located on the second floor with all of the other places that we're talking to you about today. This space is located on the first floor of the library near the circulation desk. But if you are using it, you will still come up to the second floor and visit the tech desk to be let into the space. It is a space that requires a little bit of training because some of the specialized software and things that we have in here. It contains a digital DSLR camera and tripod, some photography lighting, backdrop and turntable, and a PC with software that can process 3D models from photographs. So the purpose of this space is to be able to create 3D models, 3D digital models of real world objects. So if you have taken photographs of something out in the world, or you have something you'd like to bring into the space and photograph, the software that we have on the computer will process that into a 3D model that could be used in an online project, a digital environment, or potentially even turned into a 3D model that you could take up to the Makerspace and print. So as I said, this is one of our spaces where you do need some training in order to be able to get access to it. But if you are interested in learning more about it and learning how to use the equipment, we will schedule trainings anytime that, that we can fit it into our schedule that people are interested. So reach out to us about that.
All right, the gaming lab is up next. Here, it's also exactly what it sounds like. It's a place where people can come and play games. This was developed with the College of Computing and Informatics to help with their game design certificate. And so they can play games so that they can understand design elements, even diversity, which we have. We're going to be having a diversity in gaming collection very soon. Let me know if you'd like to know more about that. But you can check out games controllers in the headset from the tech and headsets from the tech desk. And we have an Alienware PC for PC gaming. We have an Xbox One and an Xbox 360, a PlayStation 4 Pro, and an Atari with an old tube TV that we found in the library basement. So we also have some various classic consoles available for checkout, and those are the ones with the games preloaded on them. The kind of reissues that have come out recently, and those are the PlayStation 1, Atari Flashback 9, and Nintendo and Super Nintendo. There you go. The visualization lab is also another space that does require a training. You can use it for something similar to a classroom style where you're using the giant screen that you can see the picture of. It spans the entire width of the room, or you can end up using it for virtual reality. And we have an HTC Vive VR headset. We just got a new one. And so this room is used for all kinds of things. Yes, you can play VR, but you can also collaborate, which is something that's really great for the widescreen. The screen is also great for data analysis. So if you are looking at a bunch of data all at once, or if you're looking at many, many different things, instead of having it on your possibly dual display on at your desk, or even just your laptop right now at home, the Viz Lab is really great for seeing all of those things together. So if you are interested in doing some sort of research in this room, I would definitely be the one to talk to about that, to figure out how you would use it. In addition to the virtual reality headset in the visualization lab, we also have virtual reality headsets available for checkout at the tech desk now. And we're continuing to get more of those as well. So any questions there, just let me know. And just finally, to close out the space portion of it, we are here to help you. So I know that a lot of people have not had experience with spaces like this or the tech. And so we're here for whatever you might need. You can email us at the email address here, atkinsarea49@uncc.edu. If you don't remember all of our email addresses, that will be at the very end on the ending slide today. Or if you feel like you need to talk with all of us, or you're not sure who to talk with, but we can help with all kinds of things. We can help with unconventional projects, figuring out what tech you might need to use for a project, alternatives when you know that something isn't available to you, just in general, figuring out how to make your ideas happen, and then also developing innovative classroom sessions. And those can be online or in person or hybrid or something like that. We have still been going strong, even with all of the COVID restrictions. We've done a lot of stuff online, which has been really cool. But if you are, if you're thinking about doing anything, and this is for classroom use, for your own personal use, or for research use, whatever it might be, let us know, and we can, we can set up a consultation and help you figure that out. If you are going to be doing something for your class, then when you reach out to us and say, hey, let's talk, then we'll go ahead and loop your subject librarian in also. And that is for two reasons. One, so that they know what's happening in the disciplines that they work with, so that they can speak to that and they can know if there's any overlap. And then two, in case there are any other resources that are discipline specific for your own, for the work that you're doing, because they would know discipline specific better than we would. So, all right. So, all right, Tiffany.
Hi, once again. So once you have completed your projects in your classrooms or any type of works that they are working on, we do have a place where you can house those projects, and this is Niner Commons, where I am responsible for the marketing and outreach. Niner Commons is our institutional repository, and it hosts the scholarly works of faculty, staff, and students from UNC Charlotte, making sure that we are providing a long-term preservation space for these works. You can see us at ninercommons.uncc.edu, and if you need any assistance on housing projects or works or anything of that nature, please contact myself or Savannah Lake, and we will be happy to help you.
Right, next up, go ahead.
Sorry. So now we'll talk about the examples of classes that can come into our space.
Okay, so Beth and I will both be talking about this one. So this class kind of evolved as time went on, but initially it was a business and marketing course that contacted us and wanted their students to create something that wasn't just your kind of typical paper. So initially we introduced them to all the spaces. They brought the whole class in, and we started, and we showed them all the spaces in Area 49. So the Makerspace, the multimedia lab, the easy video studio, and kind of just showed them, the possibilities within the spaces and the tech. And then eventually we broke out into the students kind of picked the space that they wanted to use to create their project. and then we would like pull them into whatever space that they were interested in and kind of go over a little bit more in depth of like if they wanted to edit a video, we went over basic video editing and things like that. And then it evolved to eventually the thing that Beth is about to talk about.
Yeah, so this class, this most recent one was online, of course, as are most right now. But this class was going to be, or the instructor was working with the Charlotte Food Desert Initiative, or Food Insecurity Initiative, and wanted to get the class involved. And so I worked with the business and marketing subject librarian, and we developed 3 class sessions. So the first one was focusing on what matters in visual representations, because the students were going to be looking at food insecurity solutions, and they were going to be representing them visually. So finding out what grocery stores and what other communities had done to solve these issues. Then class 2 was building that visual and trying to figure out what information was most important for both them to figure out solutions to share with the city of Charlotte, and also just, you know, additional questions that they might have. Building visuals in general, but also building visuals for a very, very specific purpose, and also for them to use after to determine solutions. Class 3 was great. I had a lot of fun with this class. Actually, I have fun with all the classes, but this class was particularly fun because it was all about real world problems and solutions. And so we used various visualizations, but also other solutions, just information about other solutions that they had found, to start questioning those solutions and figure out if that would be useful in Charlotte. So they started brainstorming from visualizations and from information they had gathered, so that they could start proposing solutions to this Charlotte initiative. So this is just it's just an example of working with one instructor, and this was over time. And you'll see some kind of evolution of classes like this. But we do all kinds of classes. And if you are working with us for the first time, it could be that your class would look the same way each semester, or it could look very different each semester, and that's entirely up to you. So we've also worked with history classes. The most popular for history has been using StoryMap.js and Timeline.js from Night Labs. And you can see the examples over in the pictures on the right. The first is StoryMap, the bottom is Timeline. And these are really great for students to use when they are trying to show, let's say, migration, or where certain events have occurred. So using both of those in StoryMap, and then Timeline, the obvious, using it for timeline purposes. But these are really dynamic programs. And students have used it for all kinds of things, but they look like very professional projects because these sites are maintained by people who do this kind of work all the time. And so once we did this with one history class, other people got wind of it and were really excited about it. So we continued doing that. So that class looked like, you know, us showing the programs and then doing a brainstorming session, trying to figure out which program would be easiest, or not easiest, would relate to their information better. And then also figuring out just what to put in these programs. So these are some design choices. These are some resource choices. So as you can see in StoryMap, you have the map itself that's already preloaded into StoryMap. You tag the various places, and then you have sort of a slide that you can work with. You have information there, but you can also put various media. So this example here is using a song from, I think it's from SoundCloud, but they include a song in there. So there are various media choices that you can make that students wouldn't necessarily think of initially, especially if they're used to working from traditional paper-based projects. We've also done a lot of visualizations and digital projects. This is not limited to history, it's all across the board, but in giving you the example, it's probably related best with history. We worked with a digital history class to show them an overview of various platforms that they could use for digital projects. We also talked about hosting and kind of the long-term solutions for hosting projects, brainstorming for the most appropriate type of digital project. So not just showing them that things existed, but also helping them figure out what was most appropriate for theirs. And after they developed their projects, that ended up leading to a public webinar, which is next week. Let me know if you'd like more information. It's going to be a public webinar presentation of their projects. So it's not just staying within the class, it's going further out, and they are working on, kind of getting their ideas out there for authentic experiences. Another history class was storytelling through board game development. And so their students were mapping historical events and artifacts and things like that. And so they were using Story Map, but they also were able to develop a board game. Actually, somebody also developed a small video game, but they were able to think through the concepts related to board games and think about how to use various items and various strategies in board games to give the player the ideas that they needed to get by the end of the game. So that's definitely a non-traditional project. And what we did for that is we went through various types of games to give them ideas of how they could put those ideas together into a game that would be most appropriate for their idea. All right, so this class, we did a few different types of classes, but this was for a math class, and surprisingly, we used virtual reality for it. So this instructor was teaching a math class. It was a math education class, so they would be, the students would be eventually teaching younger students about math. And one of the concepts they struggled with talking about was surface area, but specifically the surface area once two objects are combined into something different. So what we did is we took a program called Google Tilt Brush, which I'll actually show you the preview of that later. But we took that program, and in that program, which you can paint and draw and walk around in a 360 infinite space, kind of like Microsoft Paint, but in VR. What I did is I created two spheres separately. They figured out the surface area of those, and then I created the two of them together so that they overlapped, so that there was a hemisphere in the middle that was essentially cut out of that surface area measurement. And then they figured out the surface area of those. We were actually able to move in to that combined hemisphere space so that they could see what it looked like inside. So it was really bringing something to life that couldn't really be done in a physical atmosphere because merging two physical objects together, they're hard like that, wouldn't really happen in the real world. So, and then Kristen is going to talk about the activity that we completed.
So once the students had an opportunity to sort of see how those different objects were created from the different shapes put together, we broke them into groups, and each group took some time to come up with an object. For example, a house that might have been made of multiple objects. So for a house, they had a square, they had a cube, and they had a pyramid on the top. And they wrote out instructions as a group on how you would instruct someone to create that in a 3D space. They then paired up with another group, and someone from the other group put the headset on. The first group read out their instructions on how to create their shape, and the person in the headset tried to draw that object based off of those instructions. And the people in the second group, as they watched their partner, they all got to see what it looked like and try to determine what the object was. In some cases, the instructions worked great and it was a very clear object. And in other cases, they found hiccups where their instructions may not have been as clear as they originally intended. So for this activity, some of the things that we used the VR headset in the visualization lab, but we also used a recorder so that the groups, as they were reading out their instructions, they could record their instructions that were being read out and they would be able to listen back to them. They would also be able to see a recording of a screen capture of the object being drawn in the virtual space so that they could see how those things lined up and where those problems might have occurred so that they could develop better descriptive skills that they could use in their teaching going forward.
Yeah, and Kristen actually gave us the perfect example of when she said square and moved to cube, because that was really one of the goals of the class. Because students in talking about these shapes, they would use the flat 2D shape names instead of the 3D shape names. And so instead of, on the top of the square, they would have to say on one face of the cube, right? So they would have to use that correct mathematical terminology, which they weren't used to using yet. So it gave them practice with doing that. It was pretty great. Okay, so English and education, these are not always the same, but we used similar projects for these, so I included them on the same slide. But I had worked with the English learning community a few years ago, and we worked on pop-up books. And what we did was the subject librarian talked with them about research. That was one class. Another class was them going up to the special collections 10th floor and looking at pop-up books that are in the special collections collection. And then the third class, actually third and fourth, the third class was coming down to the Makerspace and learning how to manipulate paper to make pop-up books. And then the fourth class was actually using the laser cutter to create cardboard covers for their pop-up books. And what this class was all about was, this project was all about demonstrating something from their identity and their experience. And so we also thought about, we had that brainstorming element of, what are you going to need your audience to leave with? What do you want to pop off the page so that it really sticks with your audience, right? So instead of just using words or pictures, there's also using that movement where it says, here, pay attention to me. This is what I want you to remember. That class evolved into using zines and counterculture. And that was also partially because the classes had to move online because of the pandemic. And so that was easier for students to be able to do at home. So first I'll show you, these are some of the things that we did with pop-up books. You can see the flowers, those are kind of three-dimensional types of things. Not everybody had to do flowers, but it was a way to show how to do something. And then you also had various flaps and other elements of pop-up books. They turned out really great. Once we moved over to the zines, I showed them examples of zines that some historical zines and some that are new, but zines are basically a way to engage in counterculture. So kind of underground ideas, non-traditional ideas that are starting to become more mainstream. But here you were actually able to combine multiple elements of media and art that's just inherent in zines. So they made a zine about their own experience and also somewhat of an argument about a social justice issue. And once I talked with an education professor about this project, he was interested in moving his classes from doing maker stations that they had done previously. So that is going into the Makerspace and doing something different at each table. So it could be circuitry, it could be breakout EDU kits to solve a problem. It could be sewing, it could be all kinds of things. And since this was online now, he was interested in zines because his class was taking more of a social justice focus. And so zines are perfect for that kind of thing because you can draw, you can cut out things and paste them together. There really are no limits with zines. Zines have really served us well during the pandemic because there are so many uses, so many possibilities, and so many applications for them too.
So I'm going to tell you about a studio art class that we had. This was actually a class that had 3 different sessions to it, or three different classes that each came in individually. And for this class, the instructor wanted to use as much of Area 49 as possible to get her students to think about creating art using different methods, using some technology, and some things that we had available in the Makerspace. So we introduced the students to as much as we possibly could in a class period. And we did that by having 5 Makerspace stations that each had a different activity that the students could do. And each student got to choose sort of which activity they wanted to work on. And while they were working on that specific activity, they also rotated out of the Makerspace and went into the visualization lab to try out the VR headset and get a chance to do some 3D painting using Google Tilt Brush in the VR headset. We also had the 3D printer running while the students were in the Makerspace so that they could see what that looks like, how it functions, and think about if they wanted to create something that they could 3D print. The stations that we had included a lot of the different options that we have in the Makerspace that Tiffany will tell you about in a second. But the students got to spend the class period working on those. And then at the end of the period, we brought all the students back together so they could share out. And that way, if students had an interest in more than one of the stations, they only got to pick one, unfortunately, to work on during the class, but then they could hear from other students and get an idea of what it was like for them to participate in that activity.
And so with the Makerspace stations, the students were able to use the laser cutter, the Tinkercad 3D modeling, which is a program that's free for creating items on the Chromebook, so that students can be able to print those items eventually onto the 3D printer. They were also able to use sewing machines and grab whatever fabrics they wanted to use to create whatever they like. And also the LED lights were used to create, they had to create something that didn't necessarily seem to be related to the LED lights. And they also use pre-cut cardboard so they can do other activities, but they had to show us that they could create something with the cardboard that they could use in real life. And also we had the 3D printer demo, as well as Kristen was stating before, creating an item on the 3D printer.
And just to let everybody know, the visual that's here in the center, that is Tinkercad. And so it's a really basic 3D modeling software that I will say I had never done 3D modeling before using it, and it is not intimidating. So definitely, if you have any interest in 3D modeling, we'd love to get you or your students started in that really easy program.
Okay, so this next class was a writing, rhetoric, and digital studies course. And this, the project for the students was that they were to create a visual argument using one of these 4 programs, well, the 3 programs in the space, the Easy Video Studio. So Adobe Spark is a program that's super simple and intuitive, where you can create a web page that's scrollable, and it's almost like an interactive PowerPoint almost, if you would think of it that way. ThingLink is this example below. So it's, in this particular example, it's a large image of a Rams football game where they can go in and create taggable objects. And so with this example here, you can kind of scroll over the little ram head, and it gives you more information about ticket holders. And this one's talking about Kevin Porter and his age and the cost of his seat and a little blurb. But the students chose their topics, and then we provided examples of projects using the different programs. So the Spark and ThingLink, and Canva is another one that's a great resource. It's free, and students can go on and create infographics and brochures and PowerPoints. But it's really, the stuff in there is like designed really well. So if you kind of struggle with that, it's just really easy to use, and you can create some really beautiful stuff in that program as well. But they so they kind of like chose which program or space that they wanted to create their visual argument in. The librarians then facilitated how-to instructions, so how to use the different things or the space. So I gave a quick overview of the Easy Video Studio and how to use it, and then librarians and the instructor of the course offered feedback on the methods of making their visual arguments in their chosen platforms and technologies. And then at the end of it, everyone presented, and we got to see what they made in these cool programs and spaces.
All right, this is for a graduate school writing class. And this is another one where we thought about visualizations. So it was a 2-class session. First, we synthesized, we helped them figure out how to synthesize important information into visuals. So for developing their own, because a lot of them were used to only working with traditional writing pieces. And then for the second class, we thought about how, or we showed them examples. They went through various examples with diverse themes, ones that told a story with data, and then also showed audience perspectives in various ways. And then they figured out what they would be able to do with that in their own projects. So we showed them something like the example, the World Food Clock example right here, where it's information, even though it's still that data, those numbers, it's in a visual format. This clock, it says 32 seconds, it will tick up every single second, and every second it will show it that much more of how much food is produced and consumed and wasted. And so it really kind of gets behind that emotion of the data instead of just seeing it in a chart format. So we had two activities that we did in that second class to help them figure out where to go with it. The first one is to assess those visualizations. So they thought about what story was being told, the creator's methodology, and also why they were doing it, what skills and expertise they would have to have in order to develop something like this. So think networking and think collaboration, because not everybody's going to have every skill for this. And then also their own opinion, did they think that these visualizations succeeded or failed? So once they assessed others, then they went into the information for their own. And so they thought about the ideas in their own work that were really important for their audience to understand. And then they actually sketched out visualizations that could potentially work for their own ideas. And then we talked about those. We've done this class multiple times, and all of those times the students get very excited about it because they'd never really realized that they could do something like this, even if they don't have the skills to develop something digital. So it's really fascinating, the things that they come up with and how it can really enhance their work. And the last one I think we'll have today is for dance. And as promised, this is the muted Google Tilt Brush preview video. So you can see that they're drawing in a 3D space with brushes that move and glow and all kinds of things. So for this dance class, we actually used Google Tilt Brush to trace movement trajectories. So this instructor was working with motion capture in her own work, in her own research work, and wanted to put that into her class. And so the dancers actually got a chance to come into the headset and dance around in Google Tilt Brush and essentially draw their own movement patterns with their with where their hands went, and then look upon that pattern to figure out their kind of the structure of their dance and how they were going about it. It also served as a way to record improvised movements, so something that wasn't necessarily planned out. And then they also got a chance to just play some action games, and that was actually one of the most interesting parts. One of the students said that she was surprised that that an action game could relate to dance, because she was in the game, and in the game you're fighting just a bunch of giant monsters, right? And what she noticed is that improv in VR, improv practice in VR, would actually be much more effective sometimes than doing improv practice with another person, because in VR you can actually hit, or you can continue the trajectory of your arm movement instead of having to think about another person being there, right? So you can dance with another person if you find the right program. You could potentially dance with another person and not have your movement being restricted. So that was really fascinating. That instructor also had done research with us. And so I'll let Kristen talk about that.
Yeah, so to help with her research, she worked with us to acquire some more tech so that we had sensors that you can put onto your feet. So that way, when you are moving around inside of the VR environment, it's tracking not only your hands that are holding the controllers, but also your feet as they're moving. And that allowed her to track her dance movements more thoroughly. So it wasn't just upper body arm movements, it was full body with the legs included. With that technology now available, she's able to continue to do additional research and additional development in that VR space. We continue to support her with that technology and in other ways, such as with digital publishing support for a conference that she ended up holding. We used a publishing platform that we have to help her solicit participants for the conference and the potential to publish proceedings and things after a conference. And an additional plug for our digital publishing, we also support journals and book publishing. So if that is something that you are interested in, that your research or some of your class projects seem to be moving towards something larger, definitely reach out to us about that. And I'll mention one more time that we have Niner Commons, our institutional repository, available as a place to help you store any materials that you create for your class, as well as student works, publications, things like that, to make it more openly accessible to your students and the rest of the community here on campus and further out into the world. So now that we have shown you some of the things that we have done in the past and told you what we have available in Area 49, we want to take the remainder of this time to give you a chance to brainstorm some ways that you could use what we've talked about today in your classes. So we're going to start off by asking you to think of 3 concepts that you try to reinforce in your class, or maybe an activity or several activities that you regularly have students work on. So if you teach more than one class, this could be across different classes that you teach, or it could be, these could all come from one class. But think about those concepts. What are the things that you consistently want your students to walk away from your class with? And then what sort of activity assignments do you give to them to reinforce those concepts? Think of 3 parts of Area 49 that we've talked about today. So this could be any of the spaces, any of the technology that we've mentioned, the things that you could check out and take home, the easy video studio, anything that we might have in the Makerspace, any of those that really interest you that you would like to expose your students to, if there was perhaps an activity that you saw that we talked about previously, you could list that as well. So list anything that you found interesting that you'd like to get your students involved with. And you may have been doing this as we were going through already. You may have been marking some things down. So hopefully you've had a chance to think of a couple of things. If not three, hopefully at least something has come to mind here. And so now what we'd like you to do is we'd like you to think about how these could overlap. So is there a concept that you try to teach, that there's a piece of technology that Area 49 has that might be able to help assist in reinforcing that concept or thinking about it in a new way? And then as you're thinking about how those can overlap, also think about what you might need from us to help you do that. The whole reason that Area 49 exists is for us to help students and faculty to have the opportunity to use technology, to think creatively, to engage with things in a new and different way. And so we don't expect you to have all the answers. We provide consultations so that you all can come to us. We can sit down. You can tell us what you're thinking of, and it could be anything from those three concepts. You could just come in and say, my class is about this topic, and I want to use Area 49 for it, and we'll help you figure out how we can do that, how we can build an activity. We might use an activity that we've done before. We might modify an activity we've done before. We might come up with something totally new. So think about what you might need from us. Do you need that consultation? Are you really just not sure where to start? Did you see a tool in here? Did Timeline.js sound really interesting to you, but you have no idea how to use it? Make a note of that so that you can come to us and say, you mentioned something about timelines and visualizing things through time.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much, because I think Area 49 is such a really cool place, and a little overwhelming as well because of all the cool stuff that you guys offer. So thank you for the explanation of all the different things. I am actually in the Honors College. I'm the coordinator of programming, but I also teach 2 introductory level honors classes, one of which is an honors section of Arts and Society Music. And one of the tilts that I have with that class, because I'm also a mental health counselor, is how music affects emotion and memory, how memories are affected by music. And, you know, like you can hear a song from your childhood and immediately be thrown back to that place in time. And so one of the final projects that I give the class is, and I leave it wide open for them, but it's how do you visualize music, right? So I think some of the items that you guys have in Area 49 would be really cool for the students to be able to use to kind of pull that together. You know, I was with the Google tilt brush that you were talking about with the dance class, but even more like expressing emotion through music and in a visual concept, I think would be really cool. And using it in the visualization lab to, you know, just the idea of being all surrounded by the idea of how music looks to you rather than just hearing it, and using that sense, I think would be really, really cool.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. And Google Tilt Brush is a program that we use a lot of times with classes because it is very simple and pretty quick to learn how to use, so that we can get people into the headset and get them drawing and interacting pretty quickly. I do also want to say that when we do use the VR headset, we always give students an opportunity to not get into the headset. So we want to lay that out there as well, that we are really thinking about the comfort of our students when we're doing these projects as well. So when it comes to the VR headset, we have a screen in the visualization lab. It's actually right behind me there, that students that aren't in the headset can see what's happening. It's not quite the same thing because it is that 2D visual, but the other students in the room are able to see what's happening for that student in the headset. And that student who's in the headset is getting that full VR 3-dimensional experience. So we would absolutely love to work with you on something like that. That sounds like a great pairing of using Google Tilt Brush and that visualizing of music and the movement of music and the emotion of music.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, you know, kind of like Kristen said, we're always thinking about accessibility and differentiated instruction for different learning styles and all kinds of things. So we really love thinking about those kinds of things. The other thing that I'll just say really quickly, with music, I have a few visualizations that have to do with music that might be really interesting for your classes to think about, because it's thinking about how to visualize not only the music, but also the lyrics or, you know, various other things. And last thing I'll say about it is that the Visualization Lab actually has a really great sound system. When we built it, we actually had to turn down the subwoofer because the room was vibrating. So if you are wanting to do some sort of music thing in the Viz Lab, we can totally make that happen.
That would be awesome. I don't teach it until spring, but I will definitely be in touch to get that worked out.
Great.
And we've also had a comment in the chat about using the VR headset to give students an immersive experience for immersive design and architecture to help them understand the scale and what it's really like to be in maybe a space like the Coliseum or something like that. And we definitely can make that available. There are different 3D versions of different spaces out there. There is 3D video or 360 video that can go into the VR headset as well for different locations. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely reach out to us and we would love to help you find those resources and get you and your students into the headset to be able to experience those. Also, that's an opportunity to think about the Visualization Lab. Is there a space that you might like your students to experience in VR? There might be somewhere on campus that you'd like to be able to photograph and then create a digital version of that location. And then your students could step into that and interact in a way that they might not be able to in real life. They might not be able to draw or something in that space. They might not be able to move around the same way they could in the VR space as in the real space in the real world. So definitely think about that as well.
I just wanted to chime in for a second because I work in community relations, primarily with faculty and staff. And Beth and I had talked a while ago about actually having a community engagement advisory council meeting in Area 49, just to introduce folks to some of the possibilities and to talk about some of the projects you've done specifically with community engaged scholarship. So now that we're heading into the after times, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to finally making that happen in person. So this was actually really great because we're starting to plan our programming for next semester. So look for us. We're going to come on a field trip at some point.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'll just say, you know, if you are interested in getting your research group together to have an introduction to this stuff, or your larger department or something like this, or even just your classes as an intro to Area 49 and, you know, quick information about what they can do in the spaces, like we can do pretty much whatever you might need.
Well, we have used our hour. I'm gonna put our, yep, there we go. We've got our names up there, as well as Savannah, who's not with us here today, but does the digital scholarship work. So if you want to jot down any of our email addresses to reach out to us, or at the very bottom down there, the Atkins area 49 at uncc.edu. That's the address that you can use if you're just not sure which of us to reach out to, or you can't remember any of our names later. You can use Atkins area 49 at uncc.edu to reach us, and we'll get you connected to the right people to help you with whatever you're looking for. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for the great ideas and the enthusiasm around using Area 49.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.